Hello, everyone, and welcome to Maybe Muslim. I'm Mariam Haider, producer and host of the podcast, and I'm joyous to share this year's last episode with the spirited and incredible human being, Sabika Basnakwi. Sabika is a poet, organizer, SEL educator, and storyteller. Her work revolves around issues of gender, minority rights, and justice. She performs in public spaces, edits anthologies, translates, and is constantly working on at least five dreamy or nonsensical side projects. If not for her work, she would be a full time stand up comic or leading a cult of doing nothing. After working with Change.org and Fearless Collective, Sabika is currently the organizing and campaigns lead at Noor. In this episode, Sabika takes us down her memory lane, growing up in a mosque complex in Lucknow, how her Muslim upbringing has shaped her view of life and helped in using her voice against injustice and oppression. We discuss her journey being a poet performing on the streets and how her poems belong to the people and the streets she shares them with. Sabika also talks about the current realities of Indian Muslims and the constant reconciliations one does when the country one is born in and belongs to denies one acceptance and protection. Finally, we talk about love of all kinds, how kindred friendships keep our hearts and souls warm, ending with a beautiful poem by Sabika talking about what being a lover means to her in current times. This episode is recorded to commemorate and celebrate the anniversary of the 2019 Shaheen Bagh protest led by Indian Muslim women. Do give this episode a listen, share it within your circles and loved ones, and recognize your part in standing up for justice and liberation for all. Hey Sabika, welcome to Maybe Muslim. It is such a privilege and just so happy to finally have you on the podcast.
Hello, Adab, Mariam. It has been incredible that I am here. I feel honored. I have heard every single podcast of yours and really love it. And I think I can't believe you invited me.
I have to tell this to you, and I shared this with you earlier as well, that there have been moments in the journey of Maybe Muslim where I tell people that I started this with my co-host Sabika, and the first thing they say, "Oh, Sabika Basnakwi," and I remind them that Sabika Muzaffar was the co-host. However, that is such a beautiful way of putting it because people can associate maybe Muslim and Sabika in that vein, and it's just an acknowledgement of all the work you've been doing. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being a spirit of MBM even before you got became the guest.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor.
Okay, so I want to first ask you, like, how have you been? We are recording this podcast at a time where the world appears to be, it's kind of turned on its head. And I think in terms of just being alive in this moment seems like strange. And also, we are coming to the third anniversary of the Shaheen Bagh protest and the sit in movement. And you were a part of the Shaheen Bagh protest. You shared your work. You brought to light a lot of um, resonance of how women were just sitting and making themselves seen and heard. So, can you share a bit about that, and we'll go from there?
Um, I mean, the fact that uh, I don't think I've combed my hair in so many days because just completely shattered at what is happening and even more shattered at the helplessness. Full and absolute solidarity to the people of Philistine and their right to self determination and the right to self determination to people across the world anywhere. It just is ridiculous how the world is watching and people of Gaza are being buried under rubble, are being killed. And I don't know, like it is becoming difficult to breathe, difficult to. I have colleagues, friends who are Palestinians, and I absolutely do not know, how to support or what to say, because it's just such a terrible time. And what is even worse is how all of this is being used in is being cheered on by the world, and even more so in India, because this situation is being used to weaponize against Muslims in India in a big way. Kunal Purohit's report in recently showed how there is how WhatsApp groups and different channels of the right wing are using this situation to ignite even more Islamophobia in our country. And it is just people we know, like people of our country, are cheering on this genocide, a country that has a history of colonialism, that fought to be free, fought for self determination. The people of that country are actually supporting a genocidal, colonist, occupying state, I mean, Israel, and which is heartbreaking and dangerous at the same time, because it is clear that when our houses will be burnt, these folks will continue cheering. There's no stopping to that. In terms of Shaheen Bagh, a movement that was completely and absolutely led by incredible Muslim women, and a movement that is a big misal, as we call it, for generations to come. Muslim women out there on the streets, Muslim women with care and incredible articulation, talking to the world, talking to the media, Muslim women fighting for their rights, Muslim women occupying the streets, Muslim women singing together, crying together, laughing together, organizing together, standing in protests together, Muslim women drawing posters together, raising slogans together, listening to poetry together, reading out poems together, Muslim women being so vocal, thereby tarnishing and completely destroying the kind of image that the Hindutva right wanted to create for us. That they wanted to be those knights in shining armor on like white horses coming to save the Muslim woman. That has always been their narrative. Whereas the women of Shaheen Bagh, and the multiple Shaheen Baghs across the country, with their loud voices, with their fantastic and fabulous presence on those streets, with their powerful care and kindness and empathy that they brought onto the streets, and the narrative that they were able to build, completely thwarted that image. And now we are the villains for them. They're scared of us. They're scared of Muslim women. They're scared that we will speak up. They're scared, and that is the reason why they've kept Muslim women behind bars, and so many Muslim women have cases on them. I mean, look at Gulfisha. I mean, we must take a moment to think about the fact that she's still behind bars and she has not gotten bail, and also all the men. I mean, I'm not. Umar is behind bars still. There's Khalid Safi behind bars still, and it's just like a. They're just so scared. They're just so scared that we will. That we have so much incredible capacity to organize and to love. Every single person that you speak to would say that that space of Shaheen Bagh, yes, was a space of resistance. Yes, was a space where we were fighting back. Yes, was a space of occupying the streets to talk about the kind of discrimination that we've been facing. But yes, it was a space of so much of care. I'll tell you, I was in Delhi, far away from my family in Lucknow, and my family was they were here in this city, being part of the protest and the sit-in. And I was the city made me feel alienated during all of the CA and anti-CNRC movement. And The city made me feel that I did not belong. And ultimately, the only place where I felt at home was women who were like my mothers, like my sisters, like my family. Just to be there, just to sit there, just to, have those shoulders to hold on to, hands to hold on to, sit and talk, like even if to drink chai, just to talk, just to listen to it was as if I was with my family. That is, during that time, Shaheen Bagh was the only place where a lot of us felt home, the only place where we felt that we actually belonged, because it felt as if the city wanted to vomit us out. And We found so much of embrace, so much of love, and so much of friendship and solidarity, this feeling that we're not alone. And I think these women who've already been out on the streets, if anyone ever thinks that we are going to come back and continue with the kind of burdens that we were put through, that's not happening. Like, it just, there is another revolution that is happening when women come back into their homes, when the women, start occupying other spaces. There's so many women from Shaheen Bagh who have gone on to take up political roles and fight for elections at municipal levels, at different levels, or start multiple collectives. There's the movement hasn't ended. It has just taken newer shape. It has meandered into more different shapes, and like become larger in its own way, larger in its own capacity. And also to mention the kind of allyship that Shaheen Bagh got. And when I say Shaheen Bagh, I mean all the Shaheen Baghs across the country got. It was so welcoming to allies. I mean, that is a burden that we bore, that anyone who came to show allyship also saw our love and kindness. And there were few people who came, but whoever came saw the kind of love that we had, and the kind of kindness that we bore. And the bare minimum kind of allyship was also met with the loudest cheer. That is what our community together was able to achieve. And how everyone contributed to it, men, women, children. I remember one incident from Shaheen Bagh, is like the first day when we were there, when we had entered, when it all started. There was these we had some paint with us, and we thought we'll make a nook with children. And so the children a child who just took a red paint from the paintbrush. And there was this, I don't know why I always imagine children to be painting like a scenery. Whenever as a child I would pick up a pencil or a brush, I would just draw those, the traditional scenery, like the mountain and the half sun smiling, and like a river coming out, and like two palm trees, whatever, kind of a scenery or something that the child would draw. But the child picks up the paint and writes no CA, no NRC. And it broke my heart. It gave me so much of confidence that we have a generation that is talking about all of this and is aware. But also it broke my heart, because I felt that, how our children, the children of our community, have been completely deprived of are being completely deprived of their dreams in so many ways. They have to fight all of these. I mean, they don't have to fight, but they're in the middle of this resistance movement, this resistance spaces. And we're very proud that our children are participating in this. But at the same time, the fact that no, we shouldn't. Our children shouldn't have to take to the streets to fight for equal rights. They shouldn't have to be out there saying that do not discriminate against us in schools. They shouldn't be feeling small and occupying less space. Our children should be allowed to exist largely and wholly and fully and bigly, and always be treated equally, and have exactly the same chances of fulfilling their dreams and aspirations as everyone else. But we're met with discrimination, we're met with resistance. And this was the fight for our Wajood. Shaheen Bagh is a fight for our youth. I'll always talk about it in the present tense, because even though the sit-in doesn't continue, the resistance continues every single day in different capacities, in different ways, and it will continue, inshallah, till the time hate is completely like destroyed, and love is what stays. Equality and justice is what stays till the time we all get justice, till the time all the innocents behind bars are released, till the time we have equal rights, equal access, we are treated as equal citizens. Till then, Shaheen Bagh will continue in different forms, in our hearts, in our minds, and in our methods.
That's so beautifully put. I was listening to everything you were saying, and there are so many threads that come out from what you just shared. And I think what I really picked up on is when you talked about the children and the kind of fight and the kind of resistance they have to, the muscles they have to build at a time when we could be having other dreams and we could be having other aspirations. And children could be imagining sceneries and enjoying them on what I have also found, Sabika, because these thoughts and these emotions have been a part of my sort of landscape as well, emotional landscape as well, is that after having this feeling that, oh, the amount of resistance we have to live and the amount of resistance we have to build in the generations, I also see the scope of how big their world is when as they grow up, how big their hearts are as they grow up, how much compassion, how much love, how much depth of this life they are carrying at such a young age. And that for me is the hope that I constantly envision, and the kind of hope I also build and I try to channel, that to recognize that this world carries so much discrimination towards some people, the weight it imposes on so many others, helps us recognize the amount of um, joy and celebration we can offer to this world, because we resist, because we choose to find compassion, empathy, solidarity, allyship, and we will constantly do that. It's part of the awakening that the younger generation is, and that for me is just unbelievably beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope and pray, and I'm sure that the way our children are brought up, their iman, their belief is always to be on the right side of history, wherever, whoever, irrespective of identities, is being discriminated against, or is being, marginalized in any way. I hope and pray that our children are the ones whose voices are the loudest, because they've gone through it. Their voices are the loudest, and they are at the front line, always speaking up against injustice, because that's what our iman is. That's what our whole vajood is. Our whole identity is deeply rooted. And as someone who derives a lot from the battle of who derives a lot from Karbala and what unfolded before and after Karbala, I feel that our identity of siding with the marginalized is, and to grieve, using grief as a form of resistance, using and to be able to see that there are no two sides. You cannot stand in the middle. There is no, the idea of neutrality doesn't exist, should not exist for our children. Like, they should know that irrespective of anything, what is most essential is that we don't come out of bitter. We are more kind. What went on us, we should not ever subject this on someone else. But at the same time, as I said, have the loudest voice. And I'm so proud and sure that our children, till whenever they are in this world, as they explore, their voice against injustice will always be the loudest, inshallah.
Um, Sabika, that takes me to another aspect of your childhood. I want to understand, and it's something I often talk about, because it's from the place that I started understanding this idea of what is this Muslim identity that I come from. So I want, like, I'm more curious, like, when do you have those memories when you understood you carried a Muslim identity? And can you share some bit of that?
I actually grew up in a mosque compound, in a tiny house in the old city. We had like tin roofs and a very come from a very working class background. Like we all like, I still do, I come from that background, and now that I've acquired a lot of privilege, but and we still continue to live there in the same space. I still am talking to you from that compound and from that tiny house. So there's a mosque, and we have like 3 4 houses around it. And if you've seen mosque compounds anywhere in old Lucknow, they're just like it's like a mohalla where everyone is mazdoor. Someone has a small shop, someone sells something on the streets. Someone would have like a one room beauty parlor. My father used to work in the he used to be a lineman, and so that I mean, things changed of course over time, but like this space of so much of hard work and so much of love and so much of celebration. So we food was a big thing. If something was cooked in my house and I didn't like, I would just walk over to the house right in front of me. And I remember there was Auntie Dadda, we called her Auntie Dadda, and she used to cook on this. She had a little table which was a kitchen, and on her table she had this little stove. And because it was difficult for her to walk, she would sit on that table to cook. On the side she would cook rotis, and we would just sit on little bricks laid out on the floor and sit and wait for her to give us a nice roti. And she made nice began ka bharta, whatever. The same way, like this is how it always was. And my so I grew up in a very believing household. Till today, the practice of like to offer namaz is as a form of our day. Like I still talk about my day as maghrib ke baad, maghrib se pehle. I still say that, acha asr ke baad mulaqat karenge. So it's our day is still divided according to prayers. So to say that how I positively understood what my Muslim identity was. In the same way, right outside the mosque, we had this whole lane of different people living of multiple belief systems. We had so many. We had Subhash Chacha and other folks living over there, and we were just. They were also like family. They still continue to be. There was so much of interaction and love, and there was always, but not me. I was born much after the Babri Masjid incident happened. Riots broke out and all of those things, and I did grow up in a background because we were all like born in 1993, 1994, 5. That time we were brought up with this whole. We were not there to witness, but we were brought up with a memory of all that had happened. And so we were aware of what had happened and all the kind of attacks that we had faced and what we went through and what we went through as a community, but all of those things. But by the time I was growing up, those things were quite, they not resolved per se, but at least under the carpet, and people were living more affectionately around this time. How I was able, the first time I ever felt discrimination was when I was 4.5 years old. And I, trust me, I barely have much of the memory of my childhood or whatever. Like you just forget, or, but some things remain edged, like good and bad, they remain edged in your minds. And uh, I remember one of my friends who comes from and I was like I was in not lower, like lower preparatory, like just a 4 year old kid. And that year, I was returning from school on a rickshaw. We used to go in a rickshaw, and I had this friend, and she was like, "No, please come home, please come home." So I came home to her home. The rickshaw stopped, and I entered the home, and I was made to keep my bag outside the house because my bag has my tiffin, and I'm my food is impure. And I make jokes out of it, and it doesn't really um but imagine a 4-year old being told that your bag is impure, that you are allowed to enter only till this part of the house, not further. And I mean, as a kid, I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll play and go. But that stuck. That stuck. Every time I was not given a house because I was a Muslim to rent, that memory came back. I came home and told my parents and whatnot, and we continued having very cordial relationships with that family. But my parents, but I never went to their house again because I was just so, I never felt like, because I was just so like shattered at the fact that that like as a child I don't didn't know it was discrimination as such, but I just felt terrible. I was like, why are they making me do this? I was not able to understand, and it was so bad. I was not able to decipher, and that stuck with me. I was in Pune, and for many months I could did not get a house because I'm a Muslim. I would go see my brother when he went to study. He was refused a house because he was a Muslim, and that happens with us on a regular basis. I'm not the only one. Trust me, if I talk to anyone who works outside the city, outside their own home, you ask them and they will say, oh yeah, yeah. If they have not faced, they'll definitely know at least 2 to 3 people who have faced discrimination while finding houses. So yeah, I was made aware of my Muslim identity in the form of discrimination then, but in the form of a positive association with my identity was always this, the kindness, the love, and also grief. I think Muharram was a very, very, while growing up as a little kid, I think before reading or anything, one thing I learned to do was recite Nahas. And so for me, the black clothes, the where the community grief, the majlis, the marcia, all of us coming together and crying together and talking about injustice and lamenting and mourning and mourning in a community, and those julus that were taken out, and that seriousness of that place, I think it grounded me as a Muslim in so many ways. I think whatever I am, whatever poetry that I'm able to do, whatever belief system that I have, I derive from that. And that identity I would always hold on to, because it has taught me whatever I am comes from that identity, comes from those belief systems. And um, uh, I was able to see how grief is a tool for resistance, how occupying spaces is, how grieving with the community makes your heart a little lighter, how the community comes together in these times, and all of those things. Like just the preparation of it, and how it was executed, and so I did like the identity of the fact that I am Muslim, but it wasn't an identity where I thought that I'm a Muslim, hence discrimination would come to me at that time. Not that Islamophobia didn't exist. I always call it quote unquote cute Islamophobia. Uh, Cute being a very, very trivial term, but always existed. I mean, who did not? Who did not? While growing up in our schools, yes, I know we've had conversations about terrorism, and like we were told that, but all of you are terrorists. All those things have always come up, and we've faced discrimination things. Like I was always told, oh, but you do this, but do your parents allow, because they must be really conservative. This idea that Muslim parents are absolutely always conservative, which is so ridiculous. It is just whatever, like this discrimination. I mean, people are conservative irrespective of whatever belief system they come from, or religion that they come from, but this specifically associated that Muslim women are, completely. In fact, I have seen more Muslim, like I've seen Muslim women around me being so economically independent, from running small shops to beauty parlors to, doing embroidery. My mother herself, I mean, right now, now my father retired as an engineer, and my mother is a lecturer. But before that, during summers, my mom would make embroidery to earn money, like Mukesh to earn money. And so this independence of Muslim women that I have seen while growing up, this Muslim women making chicken curry, Muslim women making aris or dozi, Muslim women. So I've always had a very and studying at the same time and getting degrees at the same time and looking for jobs. I've been surrounded by these women who and so for me, I always saw this progressiveness. I mean, sure, there might not have been money and like rich, etc. But sure, our class was different than everyone else. But we were so progressive, and so we still are, and such independent women who were so powerful and so loud and so occupying spaces. And it was always a thing. So I think we always face that kind of discrimination, but there was no, I was not afraid that they'll come and burn my house down, or bulldoze my house down. So there was Islamophobia, but not to the point where I would not want to dream. I would be afraid now that I am at a position where I might be able to buy a land, but I'm like, but what if this country doesn't want me? It's earlier I never thought that my country would not want me, but maybe I was a child and I did not see all of those things. But as I'm growing up, it's even more clear that our country doesn't love us back, even if we love it. Love it from the core of our hearts. Our fellow citizens seem to be blood hungry for us. So yeah, it existed, but now it is becoming even more. I mean, our kids, I know my cousins' kids who've faced discrimination in school. Their classmates, little tiny boys and girls, have called out names to them, call them terrorists, call them impure, call them traitors, call them gaddars and whatnot. That to the point that some of our children are afraid, coming forward and saying, "Could you remove this taweez?" Because they say that they don't want to play with me because I'm a Muslim, or they won't want to come to my house because I'm a Muslim, and things like that. So it's just becoming more of a reality. But for us, for me, I think all the kindness, all the love, all the support, all the voice or power that I have to speak up against injustice, all the work that I'm doing, all the groundedness, if that's a word that I have, is all from my identity as a Muslim.
Yeah.
If I may say, even if I have, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of discipline, but whatever little that.
Um, I am, when you were sharing all of this, I had memories coming through my mind, like of that discrimination, very similar kinds of discrimination having happened at very young age. And you're right, like you don't know the word discrimination, but you feel it. You feel like suddenly because you just have a name that is not the same. Because I grew up in a Sikh neighborhood, um, and actually I've had some beautiful relationships with Sikh families. But in my school, I had like similar episodes, and I was very young. Um, and I when you said that you can, and you, even if you want to buy a house, you don't know it. It's just something that I feel a lot of us have in our minds. That how do you choose and be a patriot, a lover for the country that you go, because it's a non, like, it's a very obvious answer. Like, you grew up in India, like Indian identity and the Indianness is so rooted um, in us that we never thought that it could not be the case, or that somebody would just say that, oh, you need to question and you need to prove. um, and yeah, I'm just reeling in as you were sharing, and I just want to acknowledge that there is a lot of weight that we are carrying in this moment, and despite that weight, we are choosing to just be ourselves. And such powerful words, Sabika, when you say that this identity is your groundedness. And I would yeah, second that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the discrimination that because I know, because it's my family at the receiving end, the discrimination that the working class Muslims feel the most, the ones who are vendors, the ones out on the streets, the ones who are laborers are
Yeah,
tenfolds. It's just it is scary. One of my uncles used to um, sell churan on the cycle, and I know for a fact that it's very difficult for him to uh, go in certain lanes in certain areas without being hounded and thrown out. Now, if he so he just stopped doing that and he started another work. But the fact that it is just so I don't know how do we how a whole community's will to dream has been snatched away from us is what I feel like. There's so much of uncertainty with respect to our futures here that I don't know. Like lots of plans, but what to do with them? Because you don't know. There are concentration camps ready. You don't know whether you'll be thrown or not. Because you speak up, you don't know if a jail is waiting for you or not. So I mean, thinking of all our people who are behind bars. I mean, Gulfisha has such a beautiful future, but the fact that whatever her dreams were, just because she spoke up against the discrimination against CNRC, she is behind bars. An innocent person is behind bars. Same with Umar, a PhD, a historian, like an incredible mind behind bars. Khalid Bhai has children and a wife, such bright children, and he's missing out on such important days and behind bars because he spoke up. And not just Muslims, all allies who speak up will suffer the same fate. I mean, Siddiq Kapan, and look what happened to him, but also like look what happened to Natasha and Devangana. The fact that you speak up and you will suffer, and look at, and I want to talk about our Muslim identity, but I also want to talk about the Dalit and Adivasi movement, rights movement, and Bhima Koregaon, and like so many people behind bars and on a daily basis. It is our jails are being filled up by innocent people from marginalized communities. And it's just so essential um, to have that kind of cross movement solidarities now, because this discrimination has become a reality.
yeah,
As I say, that some days are hopeless, but a lot of days are hopeful too. I have a poem and I think I read it in everywhere. I read everywhere and I say it everywhere. It is basically in our ribs, we are carrying two plants. One is that of hope and the other of hopelessness. Sometimes we water one, sometimes the other. That's what it is.
yeah. And like, none of us are free until all of us are. So,
Totally, and there is so much of hope. I mean, in a time when there we thought that CNRC will be implemented, and I mean it will be, but there were so many people, the ummeed ke abshar log, that were right there on the streets telling you that we are here to fight this
yeah.
out. So yeah, these are the damdar log who are always there out on the streets to speak up. So there is hope. जुल्म की टहनी कभी फलती नहीं, नाव कागज की कभी चलती नहीं.
Let's talk about streets, Sabika, because um, I am I'm really keen and I have been following your work, and Sare Reh Guzar was something that you have started specifically because streets are such a space for all of us. We walk them, we stop by them, we wait for other people by them. Uh, the only way to get from one place to the other is to be on a street. And you have said something. You've written a lot of beautiful things. You've shared a lot of powerful things. But one thing that always stands is you've said that how the streets are a reflection of us. You know, can you share a bit more about that? And yeah,
I feel the streets reflect the marginalities of our society. If you look at the street, the way every person walks and occupies space on that street is so reflecting of how systems of oppression work. how there are multiple identities that are completely invisibilized. I mean, you talk about people's experiences on the street, talk about how a rich person with like a fancy car gets to occupy a street, how a person who is a laborer occupies a street, how a queer body occupies a street, how a woman occupies a street, how a Dalit woman occupies a street, how a Muslim woman in a hijab occupies a street, and what they face, how they have to constrict themselves, restrict themselves, or how do they have to walk fully, the kind of comments that they face on the street, even the accessibility of the streets. There are streets across the world that are not accessible, and streets across the world that do not that are constructed because they lie in rich neighborhoods, and streets across the world that are still muddy and difficult to walk on because they lie in different neighborhoods. So some streets are considered safe, whereas others are not, because certain communities live on those streets or dwell on those streets. So it's how streets have benches, and how streets are footpaths, but they are designed in a way that there are spikes now, so that houseless people are not able to sleep over there itself. Migrant laborers do not get space to rest their head. How they are, removed from those streets because we, quote unquote, don't like them to be there, and how street is seen as a space of beautification. All of those things. And what happened was, when I was there was a time when I was in Delhi, and mob lynchings were just every like it was something that I was hearing and listening, that people from our community are being killed for what they ate, or for like an unidentified meat in their freezer. And then and they're being killed and lynched, and people are just bystanders, and no one's doing anything. And then I'm like, if they can kill without permission, like if they can go and kill on the streets, they can kill us on the streets, I am going to go back on the same streets where they are spilling hatred, where they are killing innocents, go back on the same streets and attempt to talk about justice, and attempt to bring to light how these streets are ours. How dare you make it difficult for us to walk? How dare you make it a graveyard for us? How dare you kill us while we are there? And so many Dalits and Muslims across the country being lynched day in and day out. And actually, poetry is the only weapon that I had. And so I'm like, armed with poems, armed by my verses, I'm going to be on the streets, in market spaces, and I am going to ask everyone to stand up for justice, because it is an audience that keeps shifting. All kinds of people come on the streets, and it keeps shifting, and I can reach as many people as I can. And even if one person is able to change their mind, I'd be more than happy. And it is just it is if I mean, we do not have any channel of broadcasting what is happening to us, or asking for solidarity. Everything is stayed on, everything is lapdog. Everywhere we are being villainized. So, what is the way that I reach out to so many people? WhatsApp, social media has taken over, TV is taken over, radio is taken over, hoardings are taken over. How do I reach out to people? And the only way is just to stand on the streets and just shout out to people. Maybe someone will listen. It's also um yeah, maybe some. I don't like, people always say the kind of poetry that I used to write ghazals. I did study Urdu. I used to write ghazals and whatnot, and then I realized, no, I want to write poetry for the street. My poems are not meant to be put in big whatever libraries, with like cobwebbed libraries in old dusty almirahs, and used to teach people or whatever, taught in literature classes. I'm not worth it. I'm not worthy. My verses are not worthy. The only thing that I want is my poems to become slogans for social justice on the streets. You call them poems, you don't call them poems, I don't care. They are going to be on the streets, and I am going to speak up against discrimination. I'm done talking about someone's bal like ghataएं and someone's muskurahat like whatever, and making things on the canvas can go somewhere else. Whereas this is the time for all of our pens to serve the cause of justice. And there's all like there is no two ways about it. There shouldn't be two ways about it. I also want to write about how the moon shines and how the velvety grass feels under my feet and all of those things, but I must write poems, and I don't see the poems that I read on the streets as mine. I don't own them. They are collective. They've I have been able to put together these verses because of the knowledge that I've gained from women, including the women of Shaheen Bagh, or the women that come before me, and I have taken and derived words from them, from their experiences, and then I have then I have created this piece or whatever it is to be set out. So it is. My I want to write about different things, but the only thing that I must write about is injustice. So that because we need to archive what is happening to us. As we've seen, no one is archiving. You look at Palestine, no one is archiving what Palestine is going through and the people of Gaza are going through. It is their own people who are documenting their own genocide. And so people across the world, whenever they are marginalized, they are the only ones who have to bear the burden of archiving what happens to them. And so I see my poems as adnasa, like with a lot of humility in some form or the other, archiving what is happening to us, to our community, and also as a question to the society, to the people around us who are bystanders. It's archiving, it's questioning, it's resistance because it's loud and clear and out there. It is also a space of dreaming of an alternate future. uh, it is also very affirmative, talking about what the future holds for us, how we are. It's also like celebrating the power that we have. So, what better spaces to bring all of this together than the streets? However, I kept performing, and met with different kinds of responses. And, like how I never took permission to perform on the streets. It was always, when they are not taking permissions for hate, why do I need to take permissions for love and to cry for justice? I would just go there on the streets. So there have been like policemen who have sat and listened. There have been policemen who have asked me to leave. There have been times when there are people who have questioned me, who is giving you the money, who pays you, and you are spreading propaganda and some hate hold at me. I was afraid that someone will just come and slap me, because people, how people have become nowadays. They just the crowd, just if one person will slap me, 10 more will, come forward to do the same. But but I've also met with a lot of love and kindness, and people coming to me and saying that, oh, we do understand what the community is going through. We are with you, and like this sense of solidarity and has also come through in these spaces. And for the longest time, I continued until COVID hit. After COVID, I we did like this project of writing on the streets, writing poetry on the streets. So I got a CSBR grant to work in Lucknow with Muslim women, and we made this beautiful mural in collaboration with Fearless, Ali Raghuzer and Fearless. Made a poetry mural where we had like our conversations with Muslim women, talking about their assertion and their identity. It's called Jo Main Chahun Jisko Chahun Jaise Chahun, and it is about Muslim women's desires and their dreams, their political dreams, dreams of financial independence, and all of that, and assertion and all of those things. And we collected whatever they wrote, and they co-wrote a poem, and that poem was written in Urdu script on the streets of Lucknow, where everyone wants to delete and erase Urdu. And we have two towering images of Muslim women on the street. So I started writing poems on the walls. If I cannot be present, at least they stay for a longer time. But increasingly, because of my work, also, although protests still remain spaces where I do perform, but and speak up and write, share my poems. But since the past 2 years, I have. In the past 2 years, I have not been on the streets for a long time. I have in different capacities, like not in India, maybe in different other countries on the streets and recited poetry, but not in India over the past 1.5 years. Um, but it has to come back in some way. There are multiple reasons. I work in human rights, so my work is also so emotionally draining, and it has taken up a lot of space personally, and I also do multiple other things of organizing and community building. So that is why I've found it difficult to come back on the streets. But I am going to begin that again because I derive a lot of power from that. And also because so many younger people have reached out that they want to do the same. There's something that I used to also do called Kahani Ki Dukaan, where I would sit with books on the side of the road and people could come and just ask me to tell them a story, and I would do that. I discontinued that as well. All these need to start it, restart it again, and actually make something out of it again. And I have some new things planned, including public exhibitions of poems. Uh, on the Muslim women that I grew up with and how they feel in the current scenario, and what they have achieved, what their dreams are. So we are in the midst of doing that, and inshallah, it'll be out soon.
When you said that you've discontinued some things, what the word that came to my mind was, I don't think so. You have, because the moment you offer it to the world, it gets continued in some other way or shape or form. You know, and someone else picks up a bit of the rope that you just let out and creates something out of it. It becomes a braid of its own. And the similar thing is when you were mentioning about Shaheen Bagh, that from that movement, from that just collective, so many things have started in ways that we could not have imagined. And and that's how I define hope. That's how I define continuity in these spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, they thought that we will remain silent or it will end, but they don't realize that Muslims are journalists, writers, authors, poets, doctors, podcasters, and artists. So we are not stopping. That we will come out and do things that they've never imagined, and it'll
Yeah.
continue. Yeah.
And it takes me back to one of your interviews, and I really found that line so beautiful. And I'm using beautiful a lot of times, but that is okay. That you are a huge believer of calling people in rather than calling them out. And
Yeah.
you've mentioned how you had fears and anxieties of being on the street, knowing that some people will come and express solidarity, but there's a fear that someone might actually be aggressive. How do you continue living with that idea of calling people in, knowing that as you call them in, there are people who might want to just abuse that call?
No, I totally agree. When I say calling people in and not calling people out, it is important to call out. It is important to call out systems of discrimination. Like, it is important to call out Israel and IDF. It is important to call out the right wing government in our country. It is important to call out the Hindutva IT cell that abuses us day in and day out, call out goons that are making life difficult for people. It is important to call out systems and call out people who are discriminating, who are committing atrocities, who are, um, uh, you know, uh, um, m- making are attacking the marginalized folks or creating systems. It is important to call out systems that are being created and the people who are creating the systems that are going to marginalize us further. So I'm a huge believer of call out in a lot of ways. This line I said in context of individuals, that I have seen and met individuals across the world who are on the fence, and I have had conversations with them that had helped, that has facilitated them to understand and move a little bit towards our side. And it is important to build that kind of allyship and solidarity, to have those conversations. If we stop having conversations, see, I cannot have a conversation probably with someone who is auctioning us online, or who only wants to abuse us, who's bare end is to kill us, who really wants the us to be eliminated from our country, all of those things. There might be a chance to have a conversation, there might not be a chance for us to have a conversation. We might have a conversation, end up being completely violated and abused and all of those things. And it might go well, I don't know. Depends how you're able to arrive and meet those folks. But I see that there is a space to call in individuals, and to have conversations with them, to be able to bring them on your side. And I have done that. And I know people who have done that. And it could be through your poetry, it could be through conversations, it could be through debates, it could be through whichever way that you call people in. Maybe your kindness calls people in. Maybe just the way you exist, and the way your character is seen by the world. I again, I'm bringing something that is very Muslim, but um, just the way our prophet treated people, you know could maybe is a way of calling people in. I remember this woman, this story that my mother used to tell me when I was a little kid, to instill kindness, was that this woman used to keep throwing trash on the prophet continuously, and then one day the trash didn't come, so the prophet actually inquired about that woman, that I hope she is well, and then actually went and checked in, um, uh, and all of that. So um, I'm not saying we can be this kind always. We are not prophets. We are, at the end of the day, human beings. And I'm an absolute believer of resisting and articulating and speaking harshly against, and calling fascist, calling genocide, genocide. When I say calling in, I don't mean wrapping things in like pretty packages. When I say calling in, I mean having honest conversations, and getting people to see your side, and getting them to come towards yourself, and creating space of conversation. I'll give you an example. When we were making whenever I perform, or whenever when we painted this mural, even when I was a part of your lesson, we were painting murals, we would have a lot of people on the streets very interested to see what is happening. They would come and stand as bystanders. By calling in, I mean giving time to have those conversations, to explain what is happening, and to see how their mindset changes over time. I have personally seen that. I have seen people not ready to send their kids to study, and having conversations with them, instead of just rebuking them on not sending their kids to study, having conversations with them has led them to actually agree to send their kids to school, instead of sending them to a job at a young age. So those things, and that is why we run campaigns. Campaigns are a way of advocacy, to call people in. Our poster campaigns, our campaigns across social media are a way for people to call in. Your podcast, when people are going to hear stories of Muslims, what they are doing, what they've reached, what their views are, what their real and true experiences are, it's a way to call people in, right? You are calling them in to listen. You are calling them in to sit with you, to see your experiences. And honestly, there are wild people who will not, but there are people who will. And there are people, you and I wouldn't be doing what we are doing if we didn't believe that this is having some impact, that it is changing people's mind, that it is engaged, like people are engaging with this. And I have seen people change their views. And so that is why I absolutely believe in calling people in, and at the same time calling out systems, and calling out discrimination, and calling a spade. So yeah, it is a whole package. It has to be done in combination.
Thank you, Sabika. That is, I think that kind of sums up just the work that we put in is coming from a place that we are the ones who are also listening in. We are constantly keeping our eyes and ears open. We are witnessing. Um, we are aware, and we trust that when we are creating anything that we are creating, art or poetry, there are minds and hearts that are listening, and that's the shift that no kind of propaganda can can achieve ever. you know.
Yeah, truly, truly.
I have two more questions, and I think you've kind of just so succinctly and also just with so much clarity summed up a lot of questions that we had discussed earlier, but didn't get a chance to ask. Um, how do you define love in the world, in the country that we are from, and a time where either it's questioned as love jihad, if there is a kind of love that of interfaith couples, or queer love is not given the nod by the highest courts of the country, and yet people choose to love. So, what is your definition of love?
It's probably not the right time to ask me this question, but I feel actually love is what keeps us going. It is hope and love, the two weapons that make us fight for justice, that make revolutions possible, that make our voices louder. And love is something that, um, how do I say, it is the essential potion for our being. And it is not just like, I mean, I completely believe that across histories, love has been banned. Love has been tried to be put into, khakas and molds, and people have said, oh, you can love, but only you can only love this. You can love only, and but people have continued to love. It sure gives you so much power to go against it. It gives you enough power to uproot thrones. It gives you enough power to be okay, to be okay to live in exile just to love. People are behind bars and writing love letters still because that love keeps them going. And I'm not just romantic love. I mean all kinds of love, even friendship, the kind of, like I always say, the kind of allyship and solidarity are, the burden on us is to fight our battles, but it'll become easier if we have love from our fellow country folks, if we have that solidarity and that allyship from them, that comes out of love. And allyship and solidarity comes from little bit of love. Even if that little bit of love is there, and we have that kind of positive affirmative solidarity and allyship, which by the way Indian Muslims lack in all capacities. We do not get allyship, we barely have solidarity. Our friends, our fellow citizens, very few of them offer us unconditional solidarity. Everyone is, and so I'm just saying that it is love that keeps us going in so many ways. And it has to be love that made Faiz write letters to Alice
Absolutely.
from behind
Yeah.
bars. It has to be love that Shah Jahan's imprisoned daughter found a partner from the other side of the wall to write letters to. It has to be love that made people, uh, you know, go divana. It has to be love that made people sacrifice, write poetry, create art. It is love that makes you kinder, more tender, and despite of people you've loved, and despite the fact that they might break your heart, they might shatter you in ways, but just that love, that emotion of love, is like a seed in your heart that tells you that you have the capability to be kind, to let your heart overflow. And however, I wrote a poem sometime back about how for Indian Muslims right now, romantic love is such, I don't know, can't speak for everyone, but for me, I find it so but just before that, just a statement of solidarity for everyone who wants to love whoever they want to love and however they want to love. Absolute solidarity with them. Like, eat up the states for your love. I more than absolute solidarity for that. Like, destroy the norms that are being set up by the world. There are no stops to there's no limit to how much you can love and who you can love. So just love with all tenderness and care, and may your love and loved ones always speak up for social justice. Remember your own marginalization and speak up for others in every capacity possible. I, however, feel that how can I've been going through this, and it has been a conversation in my head for a long time. I find it very difficult to love right now romantically. Love of friends, family exists, but I find it so difficult, and I do have a poem for it as well. How does romance figure? How does love figure? How does partnership or marriage and all of those things figure in the context of right now? um I've, I have I'm so exhausted. I don't feel, even though my mind and heart and like otherwise my condition basically says that I'm ready for partnership or marriage or whatever, but I don't feel like I have the capacity to love, um uh, romantically. Like, I have love in my heart, but to invest in relationship at this moment has become such a, for Muslims, has become such a difficult thing, at least for me. Like, I'm just it's called, my poem is called, मैं तुम्हारी नहीं हो सकती.
Would you like to read it?
Yes, I would love to read it. And it is just, it is a poem that I wrote because, I was just so, I've been thinking about this in so many ways, and um it's called I Can't Be a Lover right now. नहीं, हम अभी तुम्हारे नहीं हो सकते। नहीं, हम अभी तुम्हारे नहीं हो सकते। नहीं, मेरी प्यारी भूरी आँखों वाले माशूक़, हम अभी आशिक़ नहीं बन सकते। हम कैसे तुम्हारे लिए प्यार भरी ग़ज़लें लिखें जब मेरी स्याही क्रोध से खौल रही है और मेरा कलम सिर्फ़ आज़ादी लिखना चाहता है। नहीं, मैं अभी तुम्हारी नहीं हो सकती, क्योंकि याचिकाओं को लिखने में प्रेम पत्रों से ज़्यादा लहू लगता है, बिकॉज़ पेटिशन्स रिक्वायर मोर ब्लड देन लव लेटर्स। नहीं, मैं अभी तुम्हारी नहीं हो सकती। मैं कैसे तुम्हारी उँगलियों में उँगलियाँ उलझा कर बैठ जाऊँ, जब अभी शाहीन बाग और घंटा-घर की औरतों के हाथों में हाथ डालकर साथ देना है। मैं कैसे तुम्हारी हो जाऊँ? तुम्हारी बाहों की गर्मी को इन्क़िलाब की रातों की ठंड से कैसे बदल दूँ? नहीं, मैं अभी तुम्हारी नहीं हो सकती, क्योंकि इस बार सिर्फ़ मेरे दिल और जज़्बात नहीं, मेरी नागरिकता, मेरी कौम, मेरी आज़ादी दाँव पे लगी है। तुम खुद बताओ। बदन पे लाठी के निशान, नील पड़े पाँव, रज्जगी आँखें, खाली पेट के साथ मैं तुमसे कैसे इश्क कर पाऊँगी? मैं कैसे तुम्हारी हो पाऊँगी? नहीं, मैं अभी तुम्हारी नहीं हो सकती, ना ही तुम्हारे हिज्र में रो सकती हूँ, ना तुम्हारी याद मनाऊँगी, क्योंकि शायद हर गम का एक सही वक़्त, एक सही मौका होता है, और आज अभी मुझे आँसू बहाने हैं, अपनी मौत पर, अपने वजूद की मौत पर। नहीं, मेरी प्यारी भूरी आँखों वाले आशिक़, मैं अभी तुम्हारी नहीं हो सकती, नहीं हो सकती।
Wow. Um, it's it's surreal that I was listening to it and just thinking that you've aptly captured everything. The जो मोहब्बत और जो जज़्बा मोहब्बत का होता है, वो जज़्बा जब किसी और चीज़ की तरफ ज़्यादा हमें चाहिए, like in that case we wish we had two hearts, you know, like the two lungs की जगह वो एक पेड़ hopeless वाला, एक पेड़ hopeful. I wish मोहब्बत के लिए भी दो दिल होते. um, but
अभी तो बस मोहब्बत का ये कसूर है कि कि हमें अपने मुल्क से नहीं मिल रही है।
yeah, thank you, Sabika. um,
थैंक यू।
I honestly don't have words. I just want to hug you and हाथों में हाथ डाल के I want to, like, you know, sit with you
या,
and
सेम। I think that's what we have, and I really treasure the fact that we've been able to make such friendships and solidarities, for sure during this that I will cherish throughout my life, and the communities that we've been able to build together, where we know that we will definitely get support, solidarity. When we were auctioned online, we knew there's a group of women where we could text who were also auctioned online. We do have a support for each other, with each other. In the same way, till today, I feel that. But we have to prepare ourselves in so many ways. I always say that we need to have enough money in our bank accounts for bail bond for two people at least. So this preparation for ourselves is something that जवानी बर्बाद हो गई है यार, I feel. हुस्न और जवानी दोनों। कोई कहता है तुम्हारे डार्क सर्कल्स क्यों हैं? हम कहते हैं हालात हाज़िरा की वजह से यार, हालत देख। You see, but that's what. But we'll
Yeah,
manage, and we'll come out stronger because that's what we've always done. And us together, us loud, us creative, us creating, us building communities and solidarities, we are a relentless force, and the world should beware. We will eat up the discriminatory systems and the state in ways that they would not know. They've not seen it coming. Through our poems, our slogans,
our love.
our um, our ideas, our love, our politics, all of it, and move towards a more just and equitable and more inclusive system and space. Because the fight doesn't end there;
Absolutely.
it goes. It is. There are multiple battles that need to be fought.
Thank you. It's been such an honor, and I can't wait to to meet you in person.
Inshallah, soon.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please review and or give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to them. You can also listen to other MBM episodes with Annie Zaidi, Sabah Khan, Nazni Rizvi, among others, who bring a diverse understanding of being an Indian, a Muslim, and everything in between. I'm Mariam Haider. Thank you for listening to Maybe Muslim. I'll be back in the new year with new episodes. Until then, take care. Lots of love and gratitude.